Hello everyone and welcome to a most impressive game that was played in Group B of the 2020 Chessable Masters between Fabiano, Caruana and Anish Giri, and well, let's just dive straight into it. So already e4 is on the board, so I don't even have to play it. Giri replies with e5. We have knight f3, knight to c6 and bishop to b5. So the Ruy Lopez is on the board and knight f6. Giri goes for the Berlin defense. And I know, again, it's hard to imagine an impressive game being played in the Berlin, but lately it's very often the case. And I think it could have something to do with players using, let's say, Lila Chess Zero for their opening preparation more and more. We have d3 and the bishop to c5. Now Giri prepares the castle. We have bishop to g5 and now h6, challenging the bishop, making some room for the king, and also just checking where this bishop will go. Do you want to capture? Do you want to move it? So bishop to h4 and now just d6. And here Fabi goes for c3. It's the most common move played here. Problem is, after, let's say, knight c3, you don't really threaten knight to d5. It's not an issue for black. Black can just castle, and if knight d5, g5 is very good for black, so it's not really a problem. Let's say the knight captures, queen captures bishop here, and black is very happy with everything that's happening. So instead, c3. Now he will have support for d4 in the future, and here there is a game that Giri already played with the black pieces in 2013 in Beijing, China. He played this position against Gatakamsky, and bishop to d7 was played. However, Giri always works on his theory, and here he goes for castles instead. And it is already as of move 7 that we have a completely new game. So Fabi continues developing, knight b to d2, and now g5 starts the expansion on the king side. And usually could be a bit dangerous expanding on the same side that you've castled, but here it kind of works. And here Fabi has to make a choice. Does he go back, or does he try knight captures on g5 like we've seen in the previous video? So instead we have bishop back to g3, not going for this well, very interesting sacrifice. Bishop to g3 and now knight to h5 by Giri, putting pressure on the bishop here. Maybe the knight can come to f4 and so on. So here Fabi wants to strike in the center with d4 and first eliminates one of the defenders. So bishop captures, b captures, and now d4, attacking the bishop. We have e captures on d4 and now not c captures, although this looks very natural. The pawns might be a liability later on. For example, after the bishop moves, it's hard to keep an eye on them. For example, let's say you go after the bishop, you can go a6 or a5, knight c4, you go after the bishop, but let's say rook e8, and now if you want to keep defending your pawn, it will be difficult since your king is still in the center of the board and you don't want to fight over a pawn while you sacrifice your king's safety. So instead we have knight captures on d4 by Fabi, and now knight captures on g3. We have h captures and queen f6, now with the threat of just winning a pawn here. Captures, captures, and captures. And there are a few ways you could deal with this. You could just move the knight. You could play something like queen a4, could be very interesting. Guard the knight this way. Let's say if rook b8 just castles queenside, which would be a really exciting game. Castles on opposite sides of the board and with a lot of open lines here. However, Fabi finds the very interesting queen to h5. He says, okay, you can have the d4 pawn. I'm just going to gobble up the h6 pawn and threaten checkmate here. And Giri says, yeah, let's do that. He goes for the knight, bishop captures, we have c captures, queen captures, and now, of course, queen captures on h6. And now Fabi is threatening queen to h7 checkmate, so Giri has to go back with the queen. So queen to g7 defending, and only now does Fabi castle queenside. And he says, okay, I don't mind trading here. I'm going to get a nice active square for my rook. I also have 2 pawn islands. You have 3 pawn islands. So I like my chances here. So Fabi goes rook to b8, nicely developing the rook to the semi-open b file, and e5 now. Also, this comes with the threat of checkmate, so you have to prevent this. If you don't want to capture, then you play e5. So here Fabi goes for a temporary, or maybe not, pawn sacrifice. The queen still cannot capture because of queen h7 checkmate, so here d captures on e5, and now knight to e4. So a nice positional pawn sacrifice, freeing the e4 square for his knight. Of course, next move you're threatening knight to f6 check, which just ends the game, so Giri needs to prevent this. He pushes f6. Now, is this one of those positions where it's actually okay to play f6? We'll see. Fabi goes f3, he strengthens his knight on e4, and here bishop to f5 by Giri. And now it's a question how to continue with white. You've sacrificed a pawn, but you don't have any clear ways of looking for advantage, like knight to c5. You don't really have any squares. The bishop covers everything. It's hard to say. You cannot go for any rook lifts. Also, the bishop very nicely covers that. So here, instead, Fabi decides to trade queens. We have queen captures on g7, king captures, and only now knight to c5. But now, Giri finds a most interesting idea. Rook to b5. He puts pressure on the knight. And now, Fabi has to decide where to go with the knight. Do you go to a6, but then you allow ideas like rook to a5 with a double attack here. So Fabi decides to go knight to a4. He's preparing b3 to strengthen the knight, and then you can shift the knight to b2 and then to c4, which will be an excellent outpost for the knight. So here we have rook to b4. Giri even forces this, so b3 defending, and now g4, trying to open up some lines here. And get also the bishop into the attack. However, here we have rook to d2. Probably with the idea of either doubling up on the d file, or maybe if we have a trade here, maybe you can double up on the h file as well. Could also be possible. Here, Giri goes for rook f to b8, and it's a really strong move. He's preparing c5, c4 to bust open the position. But if Fabi is not careful, there's even an immediate threat. For example, if you play something weird like rook h to d1, the threat is rook captures on a4, and it's just game over for Fabi. If the rook is captured, rook to b1 is checkmate, since the bishop nicely covers this diagonal. So here Fabi says, okay, I'm not falling for this. I'm just going to move my knight. He plays knight to c5, but this isn't much better. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find the winning move for Giri while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting that it's the exact same idea that we've just shown. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's rook to c4 with check. It was in this position that Fabiano Caruana resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. If the rook is captured, it's the same. Pawn captures, rook to b1 is checkmate. The bishop still covers this diagonal, so there's nothing for you to do. And if you don't capture the rook, then you can just play something, let's say king b2, but then you just lose a full knight. So there's that. So yeah, very, very exciting stuff, and yeah, probably where Fabi's position started to, go downhill was in the moment when Giri played g5. It was a challenge. He said, do you want to go for knight captures, captures, and captures? And then we played this game where it's hard to even call this a sacrifice. You get two very healthy pawns in front of the black king for a piece. But this was probably where he could have gone for it, but he didn't. And then after that, it was pretty much just a very, very comfortable position for black. But yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. This is it for the B stage of the tournament. Giri wins the preliminary stage of the tournament, and Maxim Vachier-Lagrave and Temur Rajabov drop out of the competition, and now the A group and the B group will merge, and we will have a knockout event, but we're going to cover more of that in the next video. So yeah, I would like to thank V. Coops, Simonas Plunge, Narendra Yadala, Jason Steely, and Kyle Myers for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Chessable Masters 2020. We go into the knockout event today, checking up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.